It's time for ROTD Weekend. I suspect that sometimes people think I must be a food snob because of my career and business. That may or may not be true. I do love delicious food, of course, but I do like a lot of really, really simple and basic things. So I don't know, maybe a snob, maybe not. I know for sure that I am not a snob when it comes to dishes, the bowls and plates that I use. My go-to plates and bowls are still the Corelle dishes. Actually, I have a set that were a bridal shower gift to my mom when she was first married. I still have those, and I have replaced and replenished those. Those are my favorites. I have a bunch of others. And the reason that I'm actually talking about this today is that I just realized something, or well, maybe I have realized it before, but I don't know if I've articulated it before. Now that I'm actually saying this, I have a feeling that way back when this podcast was still called TMI, that was Time Management Insider, that was a while ago. Back then, I might have actually talked about this. I feel like every now and then I realize how strongly I feel about this topic and that I need to talk about it. So it's possible if you've been listening that long, you've heard me riff on this, but it just came back fully into my mind again. And that is the fact that I choose the dishes that I use based on how well they fit in the dishwasher. And the reason I'm saying that right now is that I just opened the dishwasher earlier today and it was like half full of dirty dishes, and somebody had used some of the bowls that I really dislike that are in my house. And I'm moving them around the dishwasher and I'm all annoyed, and I'm realizing the reason I'm annoyed is because these bowls don't fit properly in the dishwasher. They don't nest properly. They end up leaning on each other. They take up too much room. And so if ever I have to use them or somebody else uses them, I end up fighting with them. And so even though I actually like the bowls, I like how they look, I like eating out of them, I never choose them myself for anything because I know they're going to be annoying in the dishwasher. That is definitely not a snobby reason to choose dishes, right? And I'm wondering if you feel the same way. Am I just nuts, or are you also like, these are my favorite dishes because these are the ones that fit in the dishwasher best, or wash the easiest, or maybe fit the most of something or the right size? I'm really curious. I'm going to post in our Facebook group. That is facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. I'm going to post about this, my weird non-snobby reason for why I choose the dishes that I choose. And I want to know if you feel the same way, or if you have other peculiarities about why you choose certain dishes. Speaking of snobbery, or the lack thereof, today's guest is by no means a snob when it comes to wine. Meg is the brilliant wine educator behind barreldork.com, and she also makes her own wine, and it is labeled Flip Turn Cellars. I am so excited to share this conversation with you between me and Meg Rulli about not being snobby when it comes to wine. Let's listen. Meg Rulli, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine.
I'm excited to talk with you because I love wine. I drink wine, well, a lot of days of the week, we'll put it that way. Very, very, very fun. Yeah. But I don't think I've talked with somebody before who has dived into it in a winemaking way as a way to really get to know it. So could you tell me how your wine passion started and how you got to this place where you are making wine? How did that come about?
Oh, man. I mean, I think my passion for wine began many, many years ago, but really, I grew up in a beer family. I grew up in upstate New York, and so never was really exposed to wine growing up. And then I studied abroad in Barcelona in my junior year in college. And that was really, it was right before I turned 21. So I couldn't even drink in the States. And I get over there and everything, every restaurant, every bar, everything was served with wine. I mean, wine, you saw wine more than you saw water in Spain. And it was such a big piece of the culture there. And, for €3, you could get an incredible table wine at a restaurant or tapas bar. And I was spoiled. I mean, it was the
Hmm.
best way to learn about this new spirit. And I, fully immersed myself. I mean, I don't think I had an appreciation for wine at the time. I was only 20 years old, but that certainly was I guess, the starting point in my passion for wine.
Hmm.
And, got back to the States and went back to just like drinking crap beer in college and well drinks at bars in Boston. And, so I think it was a slow evolving passion. And
Hmm.
my husband and I, a few years after we got married, we were in our late 20s and we decided to both quit our corporate jobs and travel around the world. And again, I think that's where my passion for wine kind of kicked into gear because we were traveling to these amazing places in, Argentina and Mendoza. And in Europe, we went to Tuscany and Umbria and Italy. And we discovered that we were traveling to all of these places that had incredible wine regions or an incredible wine culture. So I think that was a starting point to just this ongoing love of wine.
Hmm.
And when I got back to the States, I found myself just increasingly curious about it, wanting to learn more. I was going to wine dinners when we moved to Portland. We're right outside the Willamette Valley here in
Mm.
Portland. So there's this vibrant wine scene in the city. And I was going to all these wine bars, taking I would go to like their tasting nights and try to get out to wine country as often as possible. So fast forward, all this being said, I decided in 2019 to start taking some courses around wine,
Hmm.
thinking, hey, maybe I want to become a somm or do something in the industry. And started taking some courses and just kind of taking some part-time gigs anywhere that was hiring, whether it was a tasting room, whether it was, helping out with an event. I just wanted to be a sponge and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And it wasn't until the fall of 2019 that kind of light bulb went off where I was like, this is what I want to do. And it was harvest. So around September of 2019. And I reached out to a few local wineries and said, hey, I'm really interested in learning about the production side of wine. Could I, come in during, when you're bringing fruit in and just kind of see the actual winemaking process. And so they had me be a volunteer in their cellar, just like helping on the sorting line and helping, receiving fruit and everything. And as soon as I was a volunteer for those wineries during harvest, I realized it was winemaking that I was most passionate about. I think, seeing the grape to glass transformation, working with your hands, the manual labor that goes into winemaking, the kind of artistry mixed with the just, you're on your feet. It's very physically demanding. It inspired me beyond words. And so that was fall of 2019. And I was just like, man, I want to make wine. And without any prior cellar experience or any, viticulture or enology courses, I just decided the following year in 2020, of course, like when the world shut down and we're in the middle of the pandemic
Right.
and all of my friends were like baking banana bread that year. I was like, I think I want to learn how to like actually take a stab at this and learn how to make wine. So I purchased 1 ton of fruit, which is about 120 gallons or 50 cases of wine.
Oh, wow.
It's a final product. Yeah, it ended up being a lot, but I purchased 1 ton of Syrah fruit from Eastern Washington out in the Yakima Valley and was just like, I'm going to learn how to make wine just by diving headfirst into this. Because I'm someone that just needs to, I can take all the courses in the world, but if I'm not actually applying what I'm learning,
Hmm.
I'm not going to retain it. So just decided to go against the recommendations and advice of all of my peers and just do it. And so that was my very first year making wine. And it was just like a fire hose of information. And I was YouTubing how to use giant pieces of equipment in the winery and had to get forklift certified.
Oh,
And
wow.
there was, yeah, I mean, it just was, I was in over my head to say the very least. But it was my first year. It was so tiring, stressful, but also extremely rewarding. And I ended up releasing my first wine. So that 1 ton of Syrah, which made about 50 cases. I released that in the spring of 2022 and launched my brand, Flip Turn Cellars, and have been making wine ever since, very small production. about 300 cases annually, but kind of learning as I go, continuing to learn, working alongside mentors in the wine community here in Portland, and just still loving it as much as I did from day one.
So I have so many questions. I'm not even sure where to start. But like the thing that like it feels so daunting to me. So you have this 1 ton of fruit arrive and you need to like experiment and figure that out, but you don't want it to go bad. So are you like juicing, like how did you even start with all that fruit and making a path for yourself there?
Yeah, so I was able to secure a spot. Are you familiar with like custom crush facilities or wine collectives?
Yeah.
Was able to secure a spot in a custom crush facility here in Portland, which is basically where it's a bunch of winemakers that will share the same facility and equipment. And it's, called a winery collective. And it's basically a co-working space for winemakers because wine is incredibly capital intensive of an industry. You can have some people who will have vineyards and they have an entire winery and tasting room. But if you're a small producer, the capital expenses of running that business is not very feasible. And so these collectives allow you to kind of share that overhead and also just be able to work alongside other winemakers. And so that first year in 2020, prior to the fruit coming in, I was able to sign a contract at a collective to make my wine there. And so when the fruit came in, it gets basically you either will go like as a small producer, there are many times where I actually will go out to the vineyard and get the fruit myself in a giant like U-Haul truck and go pick up the fruit when the vineyard team picks it for harvest and then drive it back. And that is the most stressful drive because you're carrying, 6,000 pounds of fruit in this giant, 16-foot truck and driving through like the streets of Portland. And you're like, please don't get into an accident because this is my entire year's worth of,
oh God,
of inventory.
That's awful.
Yeah. But in this case, in my first year, I luckily had the fruit delivered. And so it just was a matter of sorting through all the fruit, getting out all the leaves and the gunk that got brought in from the vineyard, and then pressing it and just getting it into a fermenter. And then from there, once the grapes and the fruit and everything is kind of in your hands, then it's a matter of monitoring fermentation, just making sure that everything is healthy and moving along. And, I would say the first kind of like 3 months of harvest are very intensive and you have to be in the winery every day. It's a living, breathing organism. So you have to just kind of monitor your wine and just make sure you're making a great product at the end of the day. So.
And at what point did you get to taste it? Like when in that journey are you actually like, oh, this, I get what this is going to taste like?
Well, you're tasting it every day just to make sure, it's kind of like a daily health check that that there's no volatile acidity in the wine, that there's no off aromas that could be an indicator of a problem where you need to intervene. And so you're tasting it almost every day, especially in those first few months. But I would say, when all the sugars from the juice get converted into alcohol, the more the sugars kind of drop in the juice or the must and kind of turn into alcohol, then you start seeing its potential. And the drier the wine gets, you're like, oh, I can see how this is going to eventually taste, and you can just get a sense of the quality of fruit that you're working with. But then, there's certain things that will change over time as far as like barrel aging, and the wine just kind of goes through these like angry teenager phases where it'll taste terrible one week, and then another week you'll come in and you'll pull barrel samples and just taste the wine and you're like, oh, that tastes delicious today. But it definitely, like, the barrel aging is there for a reason, because the wine does need time to just kind of evolve and kind of, come out of its shell. So first few months, it's all over the place.
And then eventually you were happy with it and bottled it and started selling it.
Yeah. Yeah. So for that Syrah that I initially made, I, tasted it every few weeks. And then around month 20 in barrel, it started to just really have beautiful aromatics, just very nice mouthfeel. And it's kind of this point where you're just like, yep, the wine's ready. And so then from there, you have to coordinate, the bottles, ordering the bottles, getting the label designs, all the packaging. And so there's a lot of also logistical components that go into getting a wine ready to bottle. I think it's definitely taught me being in this industry to just be patient because I so wanted to just get a wine on the market and start selling and launching my brand. And I was so excited to share my final product with friends and family and people who knew everything that I had done in those leading up to that point. But I was just like, it's not ready. I gotta wait. It's not tasting good yet. I gotta wait.
Oh,
and so,
agony.
yeah. And I think, in hindsight, I should have maybe attempted to make a white wine or something in the beginning because white wines can be released much earlier because they don't they don't require the same amount of barrel aging and just kind of, the red wine was definitely a labor of love.
And you learned a lot. And I know actually, so you're doing this winemaking and you're passionate about that, but you're also passionate about teaching others about not just buying your wine, but about wines to buy. And this, I really want to ask you about this because I think you specialize in that kind of, I don't want to say everyday wine, but like you're not necessarily teaching people like how to choose that $50 bottle of wine. You're helping people choose everyday drinking wine, which is, I think, what I stumble, like I'm in my Publix grocery store staring at these bottles trying to choose. I never know. So how is your approach to that? What do you do for people when you're helping them in that decision making?
Yeah. So I, in all of this, when I started taking courses in 2019, thinking that I wanted to become a somm, I was learning so much about wine. And I started to realize that I kept coming home and just like pestering my husband about everything that I learned in class and just was like, oh, we learned this like cool. Anyways, like I was constantly going to him and talking about wine. As supportive as he's been, I feel like I need an outlet. And so I started an Instagram account, Barrel Dork, which has since grown to now be this whole online community. But I think for me, I started doing that because I feel that wine has this pretension and there's kind of this snobbery that people have about the industry. And as a result, so many people don't ask questions and they're not curious because they feel intimidated to have that conversation when they're at a restaurant and looking at this giant wine list. And they don't want to come off as being, ignorant to the somm that is working at their table and everything. And so I want to break that barrier and just meet people, the everyday wine enthusiast, and teach them kind of those practical skills and just help them become more informed consumers, helping them explore, if they really like Pinot Noir, what are some other varietals that they should check out in their local grocery store? And what are some really great value wines that, maybe, yes, you could spend, $70 on this Napa Cabernet, but there's also these incredible Sicilian red wines on the shelf right next to it for a fraction of the price, those kind of hidden gems that are just as good and much more affordable. And so I think for me, I started Barrel Dork to really just have a platform where I could be curious, people could be curious, and just that everyday wine education that everyone wants, but so many people are afraid to ask. Whether, they're at a restaurant talking to a somm or they're at a bottle shop, and kind of just break down that intimidation factor that the industry unfortunately has. So now, I hopped on Instagram in the beginning years just to do kind of these tutorial videos, a wine lesson of the day, and would just do an Instagram reel. But now I do everything from blog posts to live workshops once a month with my newsletter subscribers, and then like a lesson of the week that I'll send out to my newsletter subscribers. And I also have an online course. And just really helping people appreciate, love, and collect wine and learn more about what's in their glass that they're drinking every single day. And I think I got into this industry because I was super passionate and curious, and I wanted people to be a part of that. So
yeah, no, I really love that. I feel like I do drink wine regularly. And I don't even, like, this is the thing. I don't exactly even know what it is that I like, but I'm afraid to say out loud. Like, if I say, I like when it's dry but fruity and it has like a chocolatey flavor, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm saying that to you because I know you're not going to be snobby with me about it. But like, to say that.
Actually, that was a great description. I mean, right there. Christine's a pro.
Well, no, but you know what I mean, right? Like, I don't know that. I know that that is what I think, but is that really what I'm tasting? And am I using the weird words? Are they going to like say, oh no, those things never go together, or, you know, that kind of thing. And so to know that that there's a place that you can say what you like or what you think you like.
Yeah.
And that somebody's going to validate that and tell you other things like it and not say, oh no, you're wrong.
Yeah. And also, like, there really is, and I encourage people, there is no wrong answer or wrong statement when it comes to wine, because just like food, everyone's palate is extremely unique. And what one person likes, you know, their spice tolerance may be totally different than someone else. And so if someone's picking up on these aromatics and flavors that just seem, you know, out of left field, you still should say it, because that's your experience with the wine. But people do feel like they can't speak that truth. And you know, I had a friend who, you know, he was brand new into wine, and this was when we were in Spain, and he would just like try a wine and be like, this tastes kind of like grilled cheese. And it was one of those things, like, it was the most like bizarre statement, but that was what he was experiencing and enjoying. And, you know, I applaud that, where it was just like, we'll just literally say anything, and it's not, you shouldn't be judged by it.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for doing that. The community you're building is really exciting, and, you know, spreading the word about loving wine in a not pretentious way is really fantastic. I want to know if you have brought a surprise recipe for me today.
Of course. I mean, that's why we're here. All things wine and food, because that's,
What are you telling us about today?
So it's kind of a new dish, and I don't even have a name for it, really. It's a ribeye, like, steak bowl that my husband and I have been just kind of making far too often. But now with the warmer months, you know, we're starting to get the grill out and just finding any excuse we can here in Portland, especially after the long rainy months of Portland winter that we're so famous for out in the Pacific Northwest. It's nice that we have the drier months ahead. And so, we're firing up the grill as often as we can. And we stumbled across, and it wasn't even a stumble, but we started making this kind of bowl of veggies and ribeye steak. And we've been making it now for the last few weeks, and I'm obsessed. It's so simple. It's only a few ingredients and just tastes like so incredibly fresh and delicious.
It sounds amazing. Okay, so where do you start when you're making this one?
Well, first off, my husband, are you familiar with those, the meter, the Bluetooth thermometers?
I have a Bluetooth thermometer. I have not, somebody actually literally just asked me about it on TikTok because I use it in one of my videos. They're like, "Ooh, I need a new thermometer. Do you recommend that one?" I'm like, "I don't recommend this one." So I have one and I don't like it. But
which one do you have?
I'm not going to say because I don't want to diss a brand, but the probe is too thick. So it's fine for like a roast or, you know, but when I want to put it in a steak, I'm sure it's doing fine. It just feels to me like
it does require a lot of work.
Yeah. But no, like it's not, I want to know what the temperature is right in the very middle, not in this sort of like wide, thick probe. And like if the steak is like, okay, so if the steak is like 2 inches thick, it's fine. But if the steak is just like an inch thick and my probe is taking up over a third of it inside, like that's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to use it if we've used the thermometer on, say, flank steak. It's a lot trickier to kind of manage the temp, but with the ribeye, it's great.
It's nice and thick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got my husband the meter, the Bluetooth thermometer for Christmas. And so he's been really excited to use it. And it works great with ribeye, where you can basically just on your phone set the temperature that you desire. And we always do medium rare for our steak. And so it'll tell you, you know, when to take it off the grill and when to let it rest and then prepare. But all that being said, we found that ribeye works excellent with the thermometer, also works just excellent with this dish that we make. So really what we do is we grill the steak or the ribeye to medium rare. And I think also for this dish, we end up kind of mixing it all together with the veggies at the end. So having it medium rare, like makes all the juices come out and it creates this its own sauce for everything that's in the bowl.
Oh, I love that. So do you before you're grilling it, do you season it up? Do you do any kind of like
just salt and pepper? Yeah, just very simple salt and pepper. And then we also do the vegetables on the grill. And lately we've been doing a lot of bell pepper. So like usually like mixed ones, whether it's orange, green, red, and we'll kind of just do like tricolor bell peppers and then slice those up. And my husband has one of those like grilling trays.
Oh yeah.
So we just throw it on the grilling tray. And then we also do corn on the cob.
And so I love corn on the cob on the grill. Yeah.
Yeah, we just season everything with olive oil, salt and pepper, and then just like grill the heck out of the veggies till they're all charred and just perfectly, crisp and have all those smoky elements to them. And then we'll also grill the ribeye. And then when everything is ready, we take it off the grill and we have it on this giant cutting board. And then my husband will chop everything up kind of into like he'll cut the corn off the cob and he'll slice the peppers to be a little more diced. And then with the ribeye, he'll kind of like cube it and then he'll leave everything on the cutting board. So everything is like messy and juicy and he'll just use that and just start mixing it all together so that those flavors from the steak juice kind of incorporate with everything on the board. And so you have just like the grilled veggies that are super charred mixed in with the steak. And then what we do is we toss it with fresh Parmesan.
Oh,
and so that's one of those things where you just measure with your heart. I mean, probably put, I don't know, like a quarter cup or maybe a little more of fresh Parmesan. And we mix that in with everything just to give it that extra salty, cheesy, just deliciousness. And I also started planting herbs in my garden. And so lately I've been kind of just slicing up some basil and just topping everything with some fresh basil from the garden. That's just like super aromatic right now. And then you just put that in a bowl and everything is kind of already seasoned because you have the salt, the pepper, the juices from the steak, the grilled smokiness from the vegetables, and then the cheese, of course, which is just, chef's kiss. And it's the most simple meal, but it's so good.
It sounds amazing. I have one question. So you take the veggies and the steak off the grill. They're on the cutting board. Are you letting the steak rest before you slice it? Or, okay, no judgment either way. I was just curious because you're getting those juices out of the steak. I'm like, are you actually trying to cut it and have it ooze, or you're kind of letting it rest a little bit so it's juicy but not like crazy?
Yeah, so we're probably taking it off the grill around like 125, 130 to let it rest. And then, we let it rest for like 5 or so minutes before slicing into it. But the key is to just let the juices kind of all mix in with the veggies.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. I think so often we like throw out those juices. I do. It's very different from your steak bowl, but like Marty, my boyfriend, and my kids are obsessed with it, and we make it like every week. It's either a flank steak or a skirt steak that I just do with salt, garlic powder, and chili powder because those are the seasonings that everybody in my house likes because they all don't like all sorts of things. And that gets grilled. And then it's like rice and then like Tex-Mex ingredients. So it's like lettuce, tomato, green onions, and everybody builds their own bowl. But as I'm slicing the skirt steak, I'm transferring it to the plate that we're going to serve it from. And I scrape from the cutting board over top of the skirt steak. So all that, the chili powder, garlic, salty juices are going like back onto the slices instead of leaving them there. So I think it's the same idea. And that we normally don't do anything with those is sad.
Yeah. And honestly, like that reminds me, prior to the last few weeks where we started making this bowl, we were eating everything kind of more in like a 4 square meal where we had the corn on the cob. We had our like individual like steak pieces. We had our roasted vegetable and everything was separated. And then I was putting sauce on or like some kind of extra seasoning on the veggies, but with mixing it all together and kind of, having all the like natural juices of everything work as your sauce, like it just is so much more, everything is so much more flavorful. It's so much more simple.
Mm-hmm.
There's less ingredients, less sodium if you think about it, because you're not using all of these extra
Mm-hmm.
things to season up everything. And yeah, I mean, it's yeah, we're obsessed with it. And it's perfect for summer because it literally, like, as I'm eating it, I'm like, this just tastes like a summer barbecue.
I
This whole dish. Yeah.
So I have a very, very important question to ask you.
Yeah.
What wine do you have with this?
Okay, that is a great question. Of course I came prepared
Oh,
because
good.
I knew you would ask me that, being a winemaker. So, with pairing steak and wine, especially a ribeye, which is really fatty, the one thing that I have learned both from the industry and just like experimenting on my own in the kitchen is a really fatty piece of red meat goes with a wine that is very high in tannins. And tannins are that drying sensation you get when you drink a red wine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a naturally occurring compound on the skin of the grape. So you typically only see it in red wine making because the juice is fermented in contact with the skins with red wine. So the resulting wine, you get all of those tannins in the wine. And so there's a lot of varietals that are high in tannins. So a Cabernet, a Nebbiolo, a Tannat is really high in tannins, Cab Franc. And yeah, so I know we were talking earlier about that drying sensation. Is that something that you like or?
I do. I like it, but I like it when there's like good, I think of it as fruitiness to balance it. Like I don't like it to be, I don't want it to taste like grape juice fruity, but something like it's nice and dry, but I also feel like berry-licious kind of stuff going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's all kind of just it's balanced
Mm-hmm.
and working in harmony with the other things
Oh.
happening in the wine. But that drying sensation, whenever you taste it, almost as like you put cotton balls in your mouth and all of that moisture is just sucked out. And those are tannins.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that sensation in a wine, you can just be like, yep, that's a high tannin wine. But the tannins, so that drying sensation on your palate, mixed with the fattiness of the red meat will just make everything taste very velvety.
Mm-hmm.
And the fat kind of cuts through the drying sensation of the wine. And it just creates this like lovely feeling in your mouth. And so that being said, I really like the ribeye with a high tannin red wine, like a
Mm-hmm.
Nebbiolo, Cabernet, or Cab Franc. For this particular dish, because it has those peppers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a lot of times with a good food and wine pairing, you want to match kind of those flavors of the dish with some flavors that are coming out in the wine.
Mm-hmm.
So Cab Franc is perfect for this because Cab Franc is known for having these kind of bell pepper notes
Oh.
to the aromatics in the palate. And so for me, it's this perfect match for the dish because it makes everything taste so lovely in your mouth when it interacts with the ribeye because it's a high tannin wine, but then it also has these bell pepper aromatics and flavors that go really well with the grilled peppers in the dish. And so that would be my pick there, would be a Cab Franc. And I actually, for Flip Turn Cellars, make a Cab Franc. And that, I mean, as much as I'm biased, of course, but I love my wine and we have a lot of it, especially since, I'm, probably made about 100 cases of the Cab Franc. And that's typically what will open. Or really, a Cab Franc from France, the Loire Valley is an
Mm-hmm.
excellent wine. And those can be incredibly affordable because it's not as popular as, say, Burgundy or Bordeaux. So you
Mm-hmm.
can find really incredibly valued Cabernet Francs from the Loire Valley out in France. And so
Lovely.
if you're ever in the grocery store, next time you're in Publix, that's a wine to certainly look for. Yeah, that would be my pick for the dish.
I love it. I'm going to try this. I'm super excited. I think it would be a nice new variation on the steak bowl that my family likes, but like take it in a different direction. Excited. And I will drink the wine with it, not them, while I have it. So Meg, before you go, can you just remind people where they can find you online if they want to learn more, where they can find your wines, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So if folks want to learn more about just everyday wine education for the wine lover of any level, I would suggest going to barreldork.com. or just following me on Instagram at Barrel Dork. I do a lot of tutorial videos over on Instagram, just kind of a wine lesson of the week or the day. And then, you both on Instagram, as well as the top of my website is the link to join my newsletter. And I would highly recommend signing up for that because I share weekly wine lessons to my subscribers. I also do monthly workshops that are free to attend, and we do a deep dive on a different topic each month. So that would be kind of if you're really interested in just learning about all things wine. And then if you're interested in checking out my wines, I currently make a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Cab Franc, a dry style Riesling, and a white blend from the Willamette Valley. And then I have a few cases left of my Chardonnay that's all like stainless fermented, and it's entirely unoaked, really crisp and lean. But those are the 5 wines that I have for Flip Turn Cellars right now. And you can just go to flipturncellars.com or follow me on Instagram at flipturncellars.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Christine.
I told you, no wine snobbery there. Definitely go and find Meg Rulli online, barreldork.com, and she's also Barrel Dork on Instagram. Okay, so this is the part of the show where I usually tell you what I have planned in my kitchen for the week ahead. But as you know, I am off in Belgium. As you're listening to this, I pre-recorded it. And so I'm kind of at a loss for what I should be talking about here. So I'm going to tell you what I did the few days before actually recording this because I think that was interesting. So just a couple days ago, I headed off to Atlanta with my daughter because she wanted to see her favorite band in concert. It's a K-pop band called ITZY. The concert was amazing. She had a blast. She screamed so much. It was so fun to be there. My job during the concert was to film the concert. So I pretty much had my eye on my phone the whole time and was just looking at her and watching her joy. That was really, really a great experience. And, I think I've told you this before. I really love one-on-one trips. I think we do them with our romantic partners, like spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend. We do them with those people quite often. But whenever I get the chance to do a one-on-one trip with either of my kids, or I did one with my mom, I actually did one with my parents. I guess that's not one-on-one, but like closer than like having the kids and everybody there. Whenever I get to do those, they are just such a delight. You really get time together and really get to talk and just be yourselves together. I love it. In terms of food on that trip, it was really mostly about the concert, but I will tell you, we went to one of my weird favorite places in Atlanta. I go there every single time. It's called the Metro Diner and Bar, and it's off of Peachtree, and it's not the chain Metro Diner. This is an independent business, and the first time I found it was because I was doing some kind of late night shenanigans in Atlanta and needed food at a very late hour, and they are often open. I think they're open most of the time. There's a couple hours they close some days, and it's this really cool place that's just like very like diner vibe during the day, and then part of it turns into like a karaoke DJ bar at night. Anyways, I go there. I'm not saying that the food is spectacular, but it's open when you need it to be. We went after the concert and I always get the Reuben. I love their fries. It's just a good place to know exists when you're in Atlanta. You know what I mean? We also went to the Yard for milkshakes. This is a business that was on Shark Tank, actually. And when you get a milkshake there, you get to keep the jar. I had a s'mores milkshake, and I can tell you that, me without a big sweet tooth had some trouble. It was pretty intense, but it definitely was delicious. And if you love sweets and you love milkshakes, it is a place to check out. It has so many milkshake flavors, and they like drizzle things in the glass and roll the glass, or I guess it's a jar, roll it in other flavors, and then the milkshake's in there, and then there's toppings, and there's a big garnish. Like, it's just a whole thing. You've got to check it out. And I think my other favorite food moment on this trip was a bit of a surprise, really. I was looking for something pretty like basic and simple that both of us would like. And we do both like steaks. And so we went to the AG Steakhouse at the Ritz-Carlton, and I had a rather incredible steak and some roasted Brussels sprouts there. I was expecting, not to diss hotel restaurants, but, hotel restaurants can sometimes be a little bit more mediocre because they have a captive audience, the people staying there. And so even though I knew it was like a nice hotel, I was expecting it to just be like a good steak. It was a delicious steak. We also had really remarkably great service in that restaurant. A lovely gentleman named Tom was our waiter. He's originally from Serbia, and he was just very kind, knowledgeable, thoughtful, on top of things. So thank you to Tom and the team at AG at the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta. It was fantastic. So that was the food in Atlanta for me the last couple of days. And as I said, I'm not doing any cooking for the site. I do have new recipes coming up on the websites though, so I could tell you about those. Even though I'm away now, we did a ton of cooking before I left so that we would have lots to roll out slowly while I'm gone. So this week I have a new recipe on Cook the Story and a new recipe on the Cookful. The new Cook the Story recipe is the air fryer corn on the cob. I'm obsessed with this. And of course, I am telling you about it in more detail on the show later this week. It's just such an easy way to cook corn on the cob. And if you like it to get a little bit brown in places, like when you grill it, then this is just such a great, convenient in your kitchen way to do it. Very quick, delicious. Love that recipe. And then there's a Szechuan chicken recipe going up on the Cookful. This is my weeknight take on that Chinese stir fry that originates from the Sichuan province that has some special tingly peppercorns in it. It's a really fun twist for if you like stir fries and you want to do something a little different. This is a great one. So that is going live on the Cookful this week, and I'm telling you about it this week on the podcast as well. Other things that I am going to be telling you about this week, we're going to be dry brining some steaks. Oh, there are some really delicious stuffed shells for a midweek dinner, and a really delicious steak sauce to end the week. So there is lots to look forward to. There is something new coming every single day, I promise. And if you want to make sure you get it all, head over to cookthestory.com/ROTD. You can subscribe to the podcast there, or on your phone, go to whichever podcast app you like best and search for Recipe of the Day. Right on there, you will find me. Click follow, click subscribe. Leave a review if your podcast app allows reviews. Some of them do, some don't. 5-star ratings if it allows that. I'd really appreciate it. I want to say a big thank you to Meg Rulli from Barrel Dork and Flip Turn Cellars for being a non-snobby wine guest. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.